we've had the Janus decision, and it was adverse to unions. And what that means is fair share fees are no longer constitutional. So as unions, we can no longer collect fair share fees from our individuals that are not full dues paying members. So what does that mean? Essentially, any member that is not a full dues paying member can no longer be required to pay a fair share fee. On the day of that decision, we sent notices out to all of our local affiliates and other union dues collection or fair share fee collectors, and we informed them to stop collecting those fees. What it does not mean, we do not have to refund fair share fees that we have collected in the past. The case only deals with fair share fees moving forward. I know you all may have been informed or be aware of a current lawsuit that is pending against Education Minnesota and some of its K-12 and one of its K-12 affiliates, but at this point that litigation is pending. We do feel pretty confident that we'll prevail in that litigation, and that litigation is seeking reimbursement or retroactive fees paid back that we've collected in the past for fair share fees. But the current state of law, we don't believe that is accurate, and we believe we'll prevail on that. So at this point, we believe that there is no need to, or we won't be required to pay back any fair share fees that we've collected in the past. Moving forward, any membership forms that we've collected, anyone that has signed a form saying that they do want to be a dues paying member, those forms are valid, and those forms will last the entirety until we have an individual decide that they no longer want to be a member of the organization. Now there's two things you need to remember though. There is the actual membership of the union, and there's also what we call the dues deduction authorization. Now, on the forms that we provided, individuals decide to become a member, and it includes documentations or a statement that provides the individual to allow for dues deductions for the particular entity that will provide the paycheck for that individual. So when we have individuals that seek to not become a member anymore, that becomes immediate. Immediately they can decide not to become a member, and that's their constitutional right not to associate with the union. However, there is a section that provides for what's considered to be a drop window, and that window allows for the individual to decide to revoke the dues authorization that they had given prior for the dues deduction to be deducted from their particular paycheck. And there's a process from that. If you have any questions on that process, please contact your local field rep or your local union president. There's also been a question about exclusive rights or exclusive representative. That issue was not addressed by the court in terms of there was no decision or discussion about whether or not exclusive representation was constitutional. So moving forward, we still have the right as a union to be the exclusive representative for our members. So in this instance, MSCF is still the exclusive representative for faculty at state colleges. So that issue has not been changed at all, and we move forward with that. You may have heard that there is a pending lawsuit with that was against the interfaculty organization for St. Cloud University. And in that lawsuit, we had an individual sue claiming that because of the exclusive representation of the faculty organization there, that she was not allowed to participate or have certain advancement opportunities within the university. That case is in pending litigation. It was dismissed at the district court level in federal district court, and now there's a petition for that case to be reviewed. We are watching that case. We are not parties to that case. We are watching it, and we will report out on that case as the case moves along and moves through litigation. But at this point, it's been dismissed, and there has not been a decision made on whether or not the case will be reheard. But we will report out as the case goes along. When the case was dismissed, the courts decided that exclusive representation was constitutional and that there was no need to make any other ruling on it in that sense. Another issue that has come up since the Janus decision has come down, because we now no longer have the right to collect fair share fees, there is a conversation about whether or not it's fair for individuals to still receive the benefits of the unions and the gains that we fight for at the negotiating table. And the answer to that is yes. Every individual that is a part of the unit that we represent, exclusive representatives, still has the ability to benefit from those benefits that we negotiate at the collective, in the collective bargaining agreement at the negotiation table. And that is because we still have a duty of fair representation. And what that duty provides for is that we still represent and provide and allow for individuals to have access to the benefits that we negotiate. So what that means is anything that we negotiate as a part of the contract, all of the individuals that are part of the union have access to those contractual benefits. And if those contractual benefits are infringed upon by the employer, we have a duty to represent those individuals as they're fighting to make sure that the contract is enforced. If we do not, then we could face some consequences, some legal consequences for our failure to fairly represent our union members. And essentially what that goes back to is we cannot discriminate against any individual simply because they are not a part of or do not want to be affiliated as a union member. So we still have a right of duty of fair representation. One of the things that has come up during this process is we've heard some things floated around out there about whether or not we should have a fee for service. So essentially if we could provide a specific service to an individual and they could pay for that specific service. Being a part of a union, the big benefit of being a part of a union is the collective. As a collective, we have more power, we have a stronger voice, and with that, we have the ability to make change and create a better working environment and also gain better benefits for wages and other benefits at the collective, in the collective bargaining agreement and at the bargaining table. We do not want to undermine that by becoming simply a service organization that provides a service for a fee. We don't want to encourage that, and we don't want to undermine the ability that we have and the power that we have as a collective. So at this point, we do not support a fee-for-service model for individuals to seek one particular service that we provide on a fee-for-service, as opposed to joining the union and having access to those services.
What we're talking about is what Janus means for us moving ahead, what it means for where we are at as a country. And I think for me, it is a sort of indicator about where we're at over the long trajectory of the labor history. And to kind of understand what that means, you can think back to where labor unions even came from in the first place. And you think the most simplistic labor situation, like a factory, right? And in a factory, you have workers and you have the employee, you have the boss. And in that dynamic, in a really simple way, there is an imbalance of power, because the workers don't own the machines, they don't own the tools, they don't own the factory itself. And so the boss has a lot of power in that situation, but the workers are not powerless. And when we look to the early parts of the labor movement, one thing that they recognized early on is the boss can't exist without the workers. And so if the workers just stop doing what they're doing, they can actually have a chance to balance out that imbalance of power because the boss can't go handle all the machines, right? And so you see in that key insight becoming sort of how the labor movement sought to address workplace safety, how they sought to address respect and dignity in their lives by banding together, kind of what we call solidarity. But as the arc of the labor movement kind of continued on, you see these massive economic actions, what we call strike, right? Minnesota has some famous strikes in history, like the Hormel strike in Austin, Texas, of course, in the 30s. These were some big things that really changed the dynamics of how workers and employers related to each other. That dynamic, though, disrupted a lot of stuff. And so as we kind of move into the mid part of the century, you see these sort of legal structures pop up to basically provide a bureaucratic way for workers to address disputes, to resolve disputes and grievances on the job. And this was done to kind of ensure what sometimes people call labor peace. And in doing so, it wasn't really ever pro-worker. It was making sure that the economy did not grind to a halt, right? And the other effect of this is that you no longer necessarily had to engage in a mass worker action to get the attention of the employer. You had this kind of structure in which a few people at the top, because they knew how to do the procedures, they knew how to file the grievances, they knew how to do all this stuff, could basically take care of the work of the workers themselves. And so the need for workers to band together and do something on their own kind of dissipated. And if you talk to what I like to refer to as union nerds, they'll use this phrase and they'll call it a service union or a service model of a union, right? That you have a few people at the top servicing or providing service to the members. But that was made possible by that legal structure that was in place. And what we see with Janus is the assault on that structure itself, right? In the Abood ruling, which made possible the fair share dues for public sector union workers, that was done in the name of what they called labor peace. And so what Janus represents, and kind of thinking through what we've seen with Janus, and Janus was a long time coming. We had Friedrichs before that, and even before that, there were movements trying to unravel this stuff. It really is trying to do away with the sort of legal structure that allowed workers to address disputes on the job. And so what this shows us, of course, is where things are going, right? Janus was an attack on that to put more power in the hands of a few people at the top who want to control what happens on the workplace, whether that be a factory or if that's a school or a campus, same idea. And it also shows us, I think, where this country is headed. If you listen to any of the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, you know exactly where this is going. And he kind of sees things in that way of moving away from allowing workers to have a way to address disputes and fight for dignity and respect on the job. But I also, watching this, I think it shows us in the labor movement about where we're going. And that is that we can no longer hope to rely on this structure that would allow just a few people to take care of the business of everyone else. And to me, that means it's moving ahead by also kind of looking to our roots. If we can't rely on a legal structure to handle disputes on the job, then we have to start thinking about how do we leverage our power in numbers, how do we leverage our power in solidarity to be able to fight for the things that we've always fought for, which is respect, dignity, safety, having a life of worth and value. And so this, I think, shows us the way forward. It's a change that's a long time coming. And I think it also shows us that with MSCF in particular, we were an extremely effective service model union. We have done some amazing stuff. When we go around to these places and we talk with other people in higher education about what we've got, you'll watch their jaws drop when we talk about our hiring practices language, when we talk about our salary schedule, we talk about the benefits of bringing both part-time faculty and full-time faculty in together in the same contract. No one has done what we have been able to do. And so we have accomplished a lot, but the world and the environment in which we operate in, that's the thing that's changing in front of us. And that's why we have to keep changing and adapting to that so we can continue to fight for what we're fighting for.
There were a lot of questions prior to Janus ruling coming out about what this was going to mean for unions. And now that the ruling is out and we've had an opportunity to see its impact, we found out what it means for MSCF. And it means a couple of things that are really significant, I think, for our members to know. One of those things is MSCF is going to be stronger than ever. We've seen through our Yellow Card campaign that our members are very, very committed to us. And they're also very active. This fall, as we've been out on campuses, we've seen more engagement, more enthusiasm, more energy than we've seen in years. And that's a really positive sign going forward. And so I think that answers one of those questions about what it's going to be for us going forward. The other thing that it does is it signals a new era in MSCF. A new way of doing business, new opportunities. And again, that's an opportunity for us to strengthen our union. That's not in disrespect to anything that's happened in the past, because there's been a lot of great things that have brought us to where we are. But the only way we respect those things that have happened in the past is to adapt to new times, and that's to do business in a new way post-Janus. And that's the other opportunity that's afforded to us here as we consider what's going forward after Janus ruling occurred. As we come out of Janus in a real strong position doesn't mean that there aren't adjustments that need to be made. One of the primary things we're going to need to do is adjust our budget. So there is the reality of a loss of some dues revenue, but again, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. This allows us to examine how we do our business and reallocate our priorities according to our budget, and we'll be doing that over the course of the year. The most important thing is that we do that in an engaged way. So we'll be talking to our board about it, we'll be talking to our executive committee about it, and we'll be talking with the membership at large about it so that everybody gets a voice in that process and is invested in that process. But there are adjustments that have to be made. Again, it's a signal that we're going to do things a new way. It's a new era in MSCF, and the best thing we can do is prepare proactively for that. Not try to hold on to a past that no longer exists, but rather build for a new future that is new and strong and as good or better than we've ever been.
Janus was a challenge that we knew was coming. We spent a significant amount of time preparing for that. But the challenges are going to continue to come. And every pre-Janus in every state where we saw right-to-work legislation, that's the beginning of the challenges. It's not the end. So they are not, those behind Janus are not content with just resting on this victory. They're going to continue to push forward. We're going to see continual challenges in the form of disinformation campaigns, legal challenges, and November 6th. November 6th is the next really big challenge. On that day, all the House seats, 1 Senate seat, and the governor are all up for grabs. By now, you have probably heard the cautionary tale that was Iowa. I can do the very quick speed metal version of it. The Democrats had held the Iowa Senate for a very, very long time and served as a goalie, if you will, against any and all anti-union legislation. And they did a great job for a really long time. In 2016, the Republicans took the Senate in addition to retaining control of the House and the governor's seat. And on February 9th of that legislative year, House File 291 was introduced, and on February 17th, so that's 8 days, from the 9th to the 18th, it was passed and implemented, just like that, 8 days. Let me just be clear, you cannot do anything at a Capitol in 8 days, all right? If a fire starts in an office, it'll be 9 days before anybody calls 911, right? In those 8 days, their higher ed contract went from a fairly robust 40-ish pages to this. This is now the contract that Western Iowa Community College works from. It fits on a single page, and it is one issue bargaining. Salaries, and that's it. And there's caps put on that. All right. So when I say that the future of this particular organization, as it relates to our working conditions, our 168-page contract, when I say that the future of that document rests on November 6th, I'm really not over-exaggerating. If it seems like our approach going into this particular election cycle is different than it has been in the past, it's because it is. If it seems like you're hearing from me more than you have in the past, it's because you are. If it seems like we are being more partisan than we have in the past, it's because we are. We don't have the luxury anymore of kind of walking down the middle. In past elections, we always had the ability to go, well, we'll live to fight another 2 years. That'll be all right. I tell you what, if the election doesn't go our way, we'll regroup in my office and we'll talk a little bit about how to move forward. We don't have that luxury anymore. I've been in a lot of post-Janus planning meetings here in the last couple of years. Lots of meetings that are kind of like, well, what if this happens? How do we do this? And they've all revolved around budgets and potential legal challenges and all of it. And so when I tell you that the people here are working hard to ensure the future of this organization, please believe me, they absolutely are. But at the end of those meetings, or near the end of those meetings, somebody always says, well, can I ask this? How did this plan change if the election doesn't go our way in November? And there's always a brief silence as people just sit and think for a second. And then the answer is, well, I don't know. If November 6th doesn't go our way, all of this planning is for naught. So our job here, my job in particular, is to make sure that that our members fully appreciate what's at stake in November, so that as you go to make an informed decision about whether or not to vote and who to vote for and all of your competing interests, there's not a decent person out there who values just one of anything. But my job is that your profession, the future of your profession, and that contract works its way into the equation as you're doing that, and that when you go in to vote, you can make an informed decision that you can live with. So then, at least at the absolute minimum, regardless of the outcome, on November 7th, we can at least say, well, we knew what was coming, and we acted accordingly.
You watch what happened in Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Arizona, the whole Red for Ed movement. You see teachers realizing this fundamental truth that when it's everyone together, it's a powerful voice. And even with the elections, watching people engage, the turnout numbers we've seen, the new voter registrations we've seen, I think there's awakening that people realize, the laws and the structures that guide our lives were made by people. And if you want to have a say in what those things are going to look like, all you have to do is get involved. And watching the involvement right now has just been incredibly uplifting and positive. We have a lot of work to do, but I think we can do it. And I see that happening all around us. So that's really cool.